Nafahamu uasis ama uanzilishaji wa sunna hii ya kuchinja katika tarehe 10 ya Dhulhijja. Walipokuwa tayari kumchinja mwanae, Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala aliteremsha kondoo kutoka mbinguni na kumwamuru Nabii Ibrahim kumchinja kondoo yule.
Kuwa na tabia nzuri aliyokuwa nayo Rasul sallallahu alaihi wasallama, ili uwe mwenye kupendwa na Rasul sallallahu alaihi wasallama na uwe karibu yake siku ya Kiyama.
Laka wal mulk la sharika lak.
Kila mwaka mamilioni ya Waislamu kutoka kila kona ya dunia hukusanyika katika ardhi tukufu ya Makka.
Wiki hii kwenye Mkulima
tunaangazia kilimo mjini cha mboga za asili.
Wakati unafanya ukulima wako, ni vizuri uelewe unapanda mboga uuzie kina nani. Hawa watu wangependa mboga aina gani?
Na kisha tutamfuga nyenje.
Ungana nasi Jumamosi saa 10:30 kwa uhondo kamili wa kilimo
hapa KBC Channel 1.
Countries around the world are using accreditation services to drive innovation and, of course, promote business, commerce, as well as remove trade barriers. And in 2019, Kenya formed the Kenya Accreditation Service to help streamline accreditation services in this country. Well, we are talking to the Chief Executive Officer, Dr. Walter Ongeti. You'll be explaining to us what is the role of Kenyans in Kenya's socio-economic development, what is the status of accreditation in Kenya, and of course, what is the future talking about accreditation. Thank you very much indeed, Dr. for joining us.
Thank you.
Since 2019, what would you qualify as the biggest achievement of Kenyans?
Thank you so much, O'Brien, for having me here today. Indeed, it's been almost 8 years since I sat here.
Yep.
And quite commendable work going on here at KBC.
Asante.
I must say that indeed Kenya Accreditation Service has made major milestones since 2019, but I should be able to quickly add that it is in 2019 is when the Kenya Accreditation Service Act came into force. But the Accreditation Service itself traces its roots back in the 80s when it was a department within the Kenya Bureau of Standards.
Yep.
And later on established as under legal notice as Kenya Accreditation Service in 2011. And then increasingly all the way to last year when we had another amendment in 2024. Now we are anchored very well under Cap 496A in the laws of Kenya. And I must say that through this journey, really, O'Brien, the Kenya Accreditation Service has made major milestones, the most critical one being that what we do as an accreditation body gets what we call mutual recognition at the global level, meaning that then and I'll be going deeper into this discussion with you later on, but meaning that then what we accredit, and this is when we assess entities that are referred to as conformity assessment bodies, and these are entities that actually undertake certification work, they do inspection work, they do validation and verification work, they do testing, be it medical testing, and also proficiency testing, and just general testing. All these then form what we refer to as conformity assessment bodies. So indeed, KENAS then checks what these entities do and confirm that they are competent enough, and then accredit. So the greatest achievement over this period has been the recognition, the mutual recognition that KENAS then has in the international bodies that exist, and therefore meaning that once we accredit these entities and they are able to issue their certificates, those certificates can be recognized anywhere in the globe within that mutual recognition arrangement. So that to us is the greatest achievement, because then it means that we can be able to facilitate more trade through the certification, through the inspection, through the validation and verification, and also through the testing.
And I know that you still have a lot of people who have never understood the mandate of KENAS, the mandate of Kenya Bureau of Standards, the mandate of KEFIS. Help them understand really the distinction between authority certification and accreditation board institutions.
Thank you so much, O'Brien. So various entities play different roles in what we call the quality infrastructure. The quality infrastructure is the infrastructure that enables different entities to set up standards and then utilize these standards for purposes of ensuring that quality is realized across different sectors on these agreeable standards, be they at the local level, national level, other countries do even at a provincial level, county level, and then the international standards. So this quality infrastructure has a number of players. One such player would be an accreditation body, okay? Like in this case, Kenya Accreditation Service. Another player in the quality infrastructure would be the standards body. And in this case, for instance, for our Kenyan scenario, the Kenya Bureau of Standards, KEBS. Another player would be, for instance, the regulators, regulatory bodies. Now, like you talked about KEFIS, you can talk about KENHA, for instance, NTSA. These are regulators. WASREP, these are regulators. Then you have now conformity assessment bodies. All of these are playing part of this in this quality infrastructure. And then you have other players like the consumers and consumer associations and federations, all of this operating within this quality infrastructure. Now, back therefore to your question, in such a setup, standards body, like in this case KEBS, role is to develop the standards upon which then different aspects of the economy, be it products, be it services, would follow, would be executed, would be produced, for instance. And then you have the accreditation body, which would access the entities that I described, let's say the testing entities, the certification entities, the validation and verification, the just checking and verifying, and then the testing, let's say a medical laboratory that is undertaking testing. And those then also in the quality infrastructure become the what we call conformity assessment bodies. So what are they conforming to? They're checking, these conformity assessment bodies check. They check that, let's say you are going to undertake a malaria test. There are certain parameters that they check and say, look, when we see this number of parasites, we'll confirm that this patient has malaria. Or when we check this motor vehicle and it gets to this vehicle and that is now inspection, say this vehicle is overweight. They're checking. So those become the conformity assessment bodies. And of course then regulators. These create policies, rules. They coordinate and create the beacons within which an industry should operate. So that is how we distinguish ourselves within that particular environment and ecosystem, which we call the quality infrastructure, delineating the different players in there.
Mm-hmm. And of course, I mean, you have mentioned a number of players, and you know, it's proper to say that you do not work in isolation.
Absolutely.
I mean, in achieving your mandate. Who are some of the core players that you work with closely in executing your mandate?
So all those that we have highlighted, Brian, then become some of our critical stakeholders. Because, for instance, even as when we go to accredit, we accredit against a standard. This standard is a standard that has been developed through consensus in different forums, also bringing together different stakeholders, including ourselves, through different working groups, all the way to the international level. Then it's validated, then it becomes an international standard. So the different standards for different categories of those items that I mentioned, a different standard for testing, different standard for medical laboratories, a different standard for certification bodies and so forth. So we have to play with those different stakeholders. The entities that we talked about, the conformity assessment bodies, these are critical stakeholders. We have to engage them. We have to share with them the importance of accreditation in ensuring that quality is realized. The other key player that we really engage are regulators, because the regulator wants to ensure that the industry they regulate is operating within the agreed rules and regulations. But then what we go in there and tell the regulator is, look, we can enhance your regulatory work by introducing accreditation. And world over, accreditation is really strengthening the role of regulators, because in there and then, for example, in our case, we have worked with WASREB, that is Water Services Regulatory Board, and said, you regulate and give operating licenses to water service providers. And these water services providers, why you're regulating is because you want them to supply quality water. But how do you check and confirm that they have the competence to even undertake the necessary tests that confirm the water is of good quality? So we come in there and say, if we accredit the laboratories that test this water, we can give you the comfort that this water company has the competence to test the water that it then eventually supplies to the final consumer, and therefore enhancing your quality. Let me give you another quick example. The Kenya National Highways Authority operates way bridges across the country. And what they have then said is that, look, we can outsource this to different players. Now, we as KENHAS then partner with KENHA to say, look, because this is an inspection role, an inspection work for them to check the weight of the different vehicles going through the roads as per the set limits by KENHA itself, then we say, why can't we check and give you assurance that these organizations that are running the weigh bridges have the competence, they have the skill sets, they have the equipment they are using is well calibrated. When they say this vehicle is 50 tons, it is indeed 50 tons. And so we then go ahead and in that collaborative framework, we have moved ahead to mandate, so to speak. KENHA said you cannot operate a weigh bridge if you are not accredited by KENHAS. Ultimately, then it gives assurance to KENHA as a regulator that the people operating these weigh bridges have the competence, have the skill sets, and have the technical know-how to operate the weigh bridge, and therefore giving assurance on the quality of the roads as they are maintained.
And I know that you have mentioned a number of entities within this value chain, but I know there is somebody who is yet to understand the difference between accreditation, inspection, and certification.
Yes.
What is the difference between all these things?
Yes. So look, as you may have heard me say, the accreditation role is to check and give assurance of the competence of another entity. In this case, we are calling it a conformity assessment body. So we check and give assurance that this other entity has the competence to undertake certain roles. And so we will not probably accredit an individual and say, you know, we have accredited O'Brien in this particular area. So ours is then to do that particular role. And that's world over, that's what accreditation would entail. Now, for certification, on the other hand, is where an entity, in this case, a certification body, for example, and a certification body may be even an entity that issues certificate to now individuals, or
like
they
the
can
National
certify.
Examination Council, for example.
And say this person, O'Brien, has met the requirements of the course he was undertaking, and therefore we are certifying him. Or this product meets the specifications of the standard, and therefore we are certifying it as a good product.
That is
for
KEBS now.
Yes. Or this particular process meets the process requirements, and therefore we certify that this process, as entailed in a certain standard, meets that the specifications of the process, and therefore we are certifying that particular process. So that is what distinguishes certification from let's say accreditation.
Yeah.
And of course inspection would also fall. Now both certification and inspection would easily fall in that category of conformity assessment activities. And inspection is basically to check against set standards, and then again issuing an inspection certificate, so to speak. So the accreditation body therefore sits at the apex and checks entities that would certify or those that will then inspect. So
you see it, and you have rightly put this, I mean, you see it at the apex.
Yes.
Or you occupy the apex position. But then, who accredits the accreditor?
Thank you. That's a very good one. So the way accreditation works in the global ecosystem is that you have a national accreditation bodies, like KENAS now. KENAS now is a national accreditation body.
Yeah.
And therefore, national accreditation bodies would fit into regional accreditation bodies. And in our case now, we have our East African Accreditation Board. So far in the East African region, KENAS is the only fully constituted accreditation body. Uganda has one, UGANAS, which is still in the motion of capacity building to get to what I'll get to refer to as an arrangement member. Now, at the continental level, then you have continental accreditation bodies. In our case, we have what we call AFRAC, African Accreditation Corporation. In there again, we have a number of accreditation bodies at different levels. And these levels are also attained as you achieve and attain certain competencies. Then we now fit in the global ecosystem. Recently, a body was created called GLOBAC, that is Global Accreditation Corporation. Initially, there were two, International Laboratories Accreditation Corporation, and they're still active today, and the International Accreditation Forum. So certification issues, inspection would fall under International Accreditation Forum, and then the testing laboratories will be under International Laboratories Corporation. Now, back to your question, therefore, who accredits the accreditor? In accreditation ecosystem, we are peers, okay? So the national accreditation body like KENAS exists here. We have the South African National Accreditation System. The UK has United Kingdom Accreditation Service. So we are peers. Now, we check each other through what is referred to as a peer evaluation, where after a cycle, let's say in this case, 4 years for Kenas, different evaluators are picked from these bodies across the world, and they come to check, is Kenas also operating a robust system that then they have the competence to check others. And if that is the case, then you retain what you call your arrangement status. That status which gives you mandate to check others for recognition on the international level. If you don't have that competence, or if you had it but you've not maintained it, then you are dropped from that particular status, meaning that even if you accredited another entity and they issue a certificate, you remember during COVID-19, for example, the travel was restricted to test results from a medical laboratory that was accredited. So meaning in these circumstances, when you get to UK, they will check, okay, which laboratory tested this? Let's say Mbagathi Hospital Laboratory. Is it accredited? Who accredited them? Kenas. Kenas is recognized at that international level, and therefore that recognition of certificates is mutually, it's a mutual recognition. Similarly, if goods come into Kenya, and these goods were inspected elsewhere, then on checking these goods, the certificate of inspection will only be accepted if the inspection was conducted by a body that was accredited and is recognized under that similar arrangement. And that is the essence of accreditation, that then you avoid the scenario of retesting, because if we cannot recognize the goods and the inspection that was done, we are wondering who inspected this, then we have to retest these particular products, and it becomes costly to the importer or to the exporter on the other end. In our Kenyan scenario, and that is the essence of accreditation, to facilitate trade, that then movement of goods and services across borders is eased, and the cost of moving these goods is reduced, and thereby facilitating trade and our traders as well, locally and internationally.
I know that just the other day you celebrated the World Accreditation Day, and you had a special focus on the SMEs.
Yes.
And I know that the government is also very intentional when it comes to driving the welfare of MSMEs.
Yes.
Help us understand the linkages between Kenas and MSMEs.
So, O'Brien, indeed, we celebrated the World Accreditation Day on 9th of June. This is an event that is celebrated world over by players in the accreditation ecosystem. This year's theme indeed focused on empowering SMEs, and that was a celebration across board. So over time, and for us, for instance, as a country, SMEs play a major role in the entire ecosystem of our economy. Even for us as Kenas, 86% of all the entities that we have accredited would fall into the small, medium-sized and micro enterprises. Now,
86%.
86% of the entities which we have accredited. So SMEs face numerous challenges, as you may be aware, including access to credit, access to markets, technicalities around licensing, capital outlay, staffing issues, and such challenges. Now, accreditation, therefore, plays a critical role to be able to support such SMEs in being able to facilitate their work. Because if, for instance, you are an SME which is accredited, it means that you have more business opportunity in the space in which we operate in. Increasingly, world over, people are becoming very conscious of the quality of products they use, quality of test results they get, and quality around them, literally. Now, if you are an SME, and that's why we really encourage SMEs to seek accreditation and accreditation-related services, then first of all, you practice globally, really. For instance, we've accredited certification bodies that certify products, certify persons, and although they are accredited by KENAS here in Kenya, they are undertaking their work in 12 African countries, for instance, because then when people are looking for certification bodies, they check online on the International Accreditation Forum website, and they find this entity that is accredited, and they will pick you for the opportunities, as it were. Secondly, entities, even commercial banks, are checking and saying, if this entity has been accredited, it means they have certain competence in the space in which they operate, and therefore they can actually trade with you. Finally, when you look at some of the issues related to, let's say, regulators seeking to interact only with accredited entities, then SMEs already get a heads up, especially, or head start, especially when you are accredited. And some regulators have mandated accreditation. They are saying, look, if you want, like in the case I gave for Kenha, if you want to run the weighbridge, you have to be accredited. Some medical insurance companies are saying, you want your medical laboratory to be that we recognize in our list, then you have to be accredited. So it almost, we almost underwrite the SMEs in this particular case and say, we have checked these entities, we have confirmed that they have the right people, they have the right equipment, they have the right skill set to undertake that which they say they undertake. And we have been calling upon SMEs to walk and work with us, so that then we increasingly support them, even in linking them to access to funding and support, so that they can also be part of the ecosystem, as it were.
The current administration, has developed its socio-economic agenda, the bottom-up economic transformation agenda.
Yes.
So what is your role in ensuring that the bottom-up agenda is achieved in Kenya?
Thank you so much, O'Brien. Let me just go back to social transformation related to bringing up, let's say, the SME population, so to speak. And our role, first of all, is a catalyst role, that we have to empower the young people, we have to empower SMEs, we have to empower the different players across sectors. And I must quickly highlight here, O'Brien, that we operate in almost 6-7 sectors of the economy. You mentioned construction, for example. If there's an entity there that is selling, manufacturing construction materials, and then they have to undertake this construction material into testing, the inspectors of the buildings, lifts, and so forth. All these play in that ecosystem, and it's within the bottom-up economic transformation agenda. The medical and health sector, as I mentioned, and in fact our largest scheme really is the medical laboratories. And again, to ensure that the population is healthy and safe, and then again, we play a critical role there. In food security and food systems, testing laboratories that test fertilizer, testing of food, certification of food, and product certification, we play in that particular sector as well. Back to health, we accredited the first ever medical dentist council on the continent was accredited by us to certify persons, and these persons are medical practitioners, dentists, and so forth. That is the KMPDC. We play in that particular sector. Transport, O'Brien, we have, together with the NTSA and other players, been able to work on an accreditation scheme, and today the inspection for buses and all the transport vehicles, all those inspection bodies have to be accredited by KENAS. And so therefore, we cross-cut all these different sectors, enabling and facilitating trade, but also in that regard, boosting and facilitating the achievement of the bottom-up economic transformation.
And when you look at you know, the sectors that you operate in,
Yes.
how many entities have you managed to accredit, and are they enough?
Oh yes, that is a very good one, O'Brien. We so far have accredited around 286 entities. 286 entities, and nearly 80% of those are in Kenya. Others are outside Kenya.
So you also offer accreditation services beyond our borders?
Beyond our borders.
Very good. I mean, we'll come back with that question as you continue to respond, because for now we just need to take a short commercial break. Well, if you're just joining us, we're talking to Dr. Walter Ongeti, the Chief Executive Officer of Kenya Accreditation Service, joining us tonight, of course, to help us understand what is the role of KENAS in Kenya's socio-economic development. You're watching Inside Government. Our first break is coming up next, and then thereafter we are back. Stay right here.
Itakuwa ndio mwisho.
Ulipoenda hospitalini nilibadili nia. Mbona kumwacha mwenzako kungoja?
Aliyekupa ruhusa kuja hapa ni nani?
Nilizani kulitokea jambo.
Hakuna jambo. Tafadhali nenda. Mtaka nini msichana? Mtaka Kana ulikuwa unaenda wapi? Kwani ulikuwa unatakaje? Jirani yake ameniambia. Jirani? Wewe unasema mimi ni mwongo? Mama. Kwani mimi mamako?
19 nations will compete in the Total Energies CAF African Nations Championship, Kenya, Uganda, Tanzania 2024, which will be staged from 2nd to 30th August 2025. Amongst the 4 groups in the tournament A to D, Kenya is pooled in Group A, together with Morocco, Angola, DR Congo, and Zambia.
Algeria from the set piece, the header is on target, but it's saved.
This unique competition featuring the best locally based players from across the continent definitely has something for everyone. Just bring your A game as you let it flow live and exclusive on KBC Channel 1, your true sports partner.
Well, we're in the company of Walter Ongeti, Doctor, the Chief Executive Officer of Kenya Accreditation Services, joining us tonight. And of course, before we went for the break, you were telling us that you have accredited about 286 entities.
Absolutely.
And you are in 12 countries.
Yes.
Tell us more about that.
So, O'Brien, let me begin by going back to the 12 countries, then I'll go back to the question of whether they're enough or not. So, we have accredited these 286 conformity assessment bodies, be they certification bodies, inspection, medical laboratories, testing laboratories, and so forth. And why across these countries is because once you have that recognition, you are an arrangement member, you are recognized as I described in that structure, it means that you can accredit anywhere in the world. Any entity that plays in this space, be it an inspection body, a medical laboratory in India could choose and say, come and accredit and assess us, and if we meet the requirements, you accredit us.
And they can also bypass their national accreditation service.
So the rules are there as well, as long as they seek, concurrence. Some countries have put in laws and said you can only be accredited by the national body. That's the amendment that took place, for instance, in our case last year, that if you operate in Kenya, you have to then be accredited by KENAS. But some of these countries don't have a full-fledged accreditation body, or they have, but it's still in its formative stages. But they have the requirements for testing. They have goods and services they would want to export, and also just to maintain good quality within their own ecosystem. So that is why we then have accredited in these other countries. But remember, accreditation is about recognition of certificates between countries. So it becomes advantageous for Kenya, for example, if an exporter is from Kenya, okay, they're exporting their goods to Uganda. And the certificate will be issued, the inspection certificate will be issued by an entity accredited by KENAS. And it will be checked by another inspection body in Uganda, which is accredited by KENAS. So you see, it becomes very easy to recognize the certificate because KENAS is on both sides. But remember, under the AFCTA arrangement, then we are creating one big market, and therefore the need for quality across the continent as well. Now, back to the question of whether these 286 are enough, the answer is yes and no. No, because we have so many conformity assessment bodies that are not accredited yet. For instance, we just finished an analysis, a mapping of all entities that are either medical laboratories, testing, and so forth. And we realized that we have 3,172 entities in Kenya which are yet to be accredited. And yet they continue offering different services, and we are encouraging them to come for accreditation. Because
so you have accredited less than 10%?
Absolutely, absolutely. So there is a lot to be done there, and it is to the advantage of the user of the products, goods, and services, and that is the mwananchi. For example, you have seen scenarios where somebody gets tested and they're told you have malaria and or typhoid, and then you go through the treatment regime, only to realize later that the equipment were faulty. Now, what accreditation does is to check the equipment, or the person who is undertaking the test is not competent enough to undertake that particular test. So the point is that we need more of those entities to come and get accreditation, now that accreditation is mandatory, and I'll be talking about that probably at a later point. But the other answer was yes to some extent. Why? We are not in the mass, as I said, we do tier one. We do bodies and not individuals or entities. So for example, when we accredit, like we recently accredited the Kenya Dairy Board, testing laboratory, and because Kenya Dairy Board is the regulator when it comes to the dairy sector, and they have this one huge laboratory that every dairy processor then takes their samples there for purposes of testing. Once we accredit that, and then Kenya Dairy Board gives assurance of these 1.8 billion liters of milk that go through the ecosystem, then for us, it gives us some level of comfort that Kenya Dairy Board has the competence to give the assurance to the public that all the processors that process milk and all the products that they are authorizing to get to the marketplace meet the standards that they have set and that exist as per the standard that we accredited. So ultimately, it is our desire that any entity that is out there that is undertaking activities that fall within the ambit of accreditation should really seek accreditation, because then it becomes important for the economy, for public health, to facilitate trade, and also to ensure that we maintain environmental safety and standards.
You know, the law now, you know, makes it mandatory for these kind of agencies, you know, to be accredited by KENAS. Are you working within a certain time frame to ensure that the more than 2,800 entities that are supposed to be accredited by you are accredited?
Yes. So the law, as it was amended last year, that introducing Section 10A to our Act, stipulated a number of items there. Number one was that all entities that undertake conformity assessment activities shall be accredited by KENAS. Why so?
Shall, so yes, it is a must.
Yes. Why so? And in the wisdom of Parliament, is that there are also entities in the country which should be largely accredited by KENAS, and they would go out there because you are free to get, the same way we are free to go to any other country to seek accreditation. You know, they can go out there and get another body to come. Let's say the South African National Accreditation System to come and accredit here. Partly could be because maybe KENAS, because these competencies we also build, as I explained. Maybe it is an area where KENAS didn't have competence earlier on, so they go and get another entity out there to accredit. But others, out of preference, would go for another accreditation body. The challenge that obtains, and this is where we believe the wisdom of Parliament and other stakeholders and the government was, is that others go for far-fetched accreditation bodies because surveillance is difficult.
Yeah.
So, or the distance then limits the accreditation body from surveilling. So where there is a national interest in a certain area and the accreditation body that has accredited you is far off, then it becomes difficult for, let's say, Parliament or our courts of law to come and ask what this conformity assessment body is doing and its capabilities and competencies, so to speak, or to just answer to questions like we answer to questions when they are raised by any stakeholder. So in the wisdom of Parliament and government, it became wise, and other governments elsewhere, jurisdictions are also executing the same. For instance, we cannot just enter the Gulf region. You have this a Gulf accreditation body there that is mandated to accredit entities within the Gulf and so forth. So that is number one. Number two is that then these conformity assessment bodies, as now prescribed in the law, requires these entities to be accredited so that they give assurance and that they are undertaking activities that promote trade and that the consumer is not exploited, so to speak. You can imagine you undertake a test in one lab, you've seen, then you move in another, this is giving you different results, you go to another, ultimately spending a little bit more resources, but also to facilitate trade, because we want our goods as a country to have more acceptance and our services across the globe, and therefore facilitating trade. And therefore the mandatory accreditation came into force. Now, in terms of timelines, therefore, O'Brien, it was anticipated that by March of this year, any entity that was accredited by a foreign accreditation body would then seek transition to KENAS, because this amendment came in force on 27th December. Yeah. And so entities were given 3 months, and it's prescribed in the law, that is now Section 10A2, to transition to KENAS or ultimately seek exemption. And we are very happy to indicate that a number of those entities have come. We've had discussions on how they will transition, and also had discussions on how they can be exempted. And we are reasonable enough to say, let's say an entity was just accredited last month, you know, we'll then discuss and agree on the framework of arrangement in that regard. But ultimately we are ready, and we are already talking to different stakeholders to see how entities that are not well resourced to afford accreditation or to prepare for accreditation, because it's a process. Remember, if you are... Is it expensive? For expensive in terms of the initial costs related to accreditation, but in the long run, it is beneficial in the sense that, O'Brien, we've had conversations with entities that are accredited, and you'll be amazed. For instance, entities even at the county level, you find a county medical laboratory that was generating just about 400,000 shillings a month, now doing 4 million shillings. Because people can trust the results, they take their samples there. And also remember, the accreditation process improves documentation, improves customer relationship, improves policy and how you engage, improves records management and efficiency as well. And efficiency. So in that regard, therefore, in the long run, it becomes beneficial to organizations. But the initial costs, preparing your team, recruiting the right people with the right skills, purchasing the equipment, the proper equipment, calibrating this equipment for those that are in, let's say, testing or calibration laboratories. This could be costly, and that's why we are engaging different stakeholders to say, how do we support these, especially small, medium-sized enterprises?
Why do you think that you still have so many entities out there, in their thousands? Yes. Yes. With the knowledge of the benefits of being accredited in mind, why do you still think they're still without or outside the tenets of accreditation?
There are a number of reasons. Number one is that information about accreditation is information that we now want to robustly disseminate to different entities, including these almost 3,200 entities, and we are engaging them, we are talking to them, and so forth. So that then the value of accreditation becomes critical, so to speak. Secondly, it is our understanding that sometimes entities have different priorities. Sometimes then you are struggling to just establish your small facility there, then you have all these other issues to deal with before you think of accreditation, especially the initial thinking that it is just for international purposes. But the way we have now sort of looked at other models, the way they work, and where we are going as KENAS, is that we want to create a bridge between the international standards upon which we accredit entities with where these entities, the SMEs especially, sit. How can we create a bridge so that these entities grow to that particular level? And we are saying that we need to have the conversation around quality, not just because we are exporting these products out there, or because we want our certificates to be recognized for exports and so forth, but it's because we want to also have quality at the county level. We want quality at the ward level. That I also want assurance that the tomato I'm consuming on my table, the fish is also of good quality. This quality should not just be because I want it, it has to be for export. Have you ever wondered where, O'Brien, for example, the products that are rejected for international purposes, that they are not meeting standards, end up? How can we make Mama Mboga, and that is where the bottom-up economic transformation agenda comes in, how can we make Mama Mboga also appreciate quality? That small-scale farmer who sprays the tomatoes in the morning and harvests for the marketplace, how do we ensure that that tomato does not land on the plate? The excessive use of antibiotics in our animals and livestock, and then you know, the process that enables this product which cannot meet the international standards but lands on our plates. Okay, so we want to create that bridge so that accreditation services are used at the most local level, because we also demand of quality at that level, and then graduate, and that will be together with stakeholders, so that we have national standards and schemes, regional, and that particular level, facilitate trade at that level, and increasingly then build these entities to be able to focus on the international.
You know, in the interest of time, because we have to wind up, I just want to hear from you in 30 seconds. What is the future of accreditation in Kenya?
Oh, it's very bright. The future is very bright, O'Brien, in the sense that we want to now robustly engage stakeholders. With the new laws in place, we are putting in place regulations, and we'll be engaging stakeholders in public participation forums. Those public participation forums, we also want to do sensitization forums. We want to collaborate with county governments and other regulators to be able to enhance accreditation and put accreditation at the center of all economic activities. And as I have put across, we would want to then work on systems that enable accreditation and indeed the quality infrastructure operate from the very local level up to the international level. And we are going to do this across the country, so to speak, so that everybody appreciates the value of accreditation, and ultimately we can grow the economy together. Asante.
Daktari, thank you very much indeed for joining us tonight, and of course for helping us and sharing with us those insights on accreditation.
Asante.
Your time is highly appreciated.
Thank you. Thank you so very much.
I mean, Daktari Walter Ongeti is the Chief Executive Officer at the Kenya Accreditation Services. You're joining us tonight to help us understand the role of Kenyans in Kenya's socio-economic development. You have been watching Inside Government live from our broadcasting house. My name is O'Brien Kimani. Thank you very much indeed. Primetime edition is coming up next. Stay right here.
Greetings in the name of the Most High, Jah Rastafari. My good name is Marley Moses, the positive warrior, alongside...
Yes, sir, DJ D-Rage, the baddest. Each and every Wednesday from 10 p.m. on KBC Channel 1 TV.
Tunakuletea the biggest reggae party in 254 in a yard extra. Extra niceness of reggae music.
Extra dose of entertainment.
When the thing is nice,
we have to do it twice.
Nimeua mtu kweli? Haujaua. Alafu basi nipeleke pole pole. Ngoja niongee na huyu. Lakini unapatanga advertisement, si ndio?
Sasa advertisement ikitokea kama haoni atajuaje?